When we talk about the Bauhaus, today we primarily are thinking about the school in its Dessau location. However, Dessau was actually the second iteration of the Bauhaus. It started 4 years earlier in Weimar. In 1919, Walter Gropius combined Saxony's School of Fine Arts and the School of Applied Arts. This collapses a conventional hierarchy between fine and applied arts. This is something we've been talking about all semester, but it comes to a head here in the Bauhaus, and it really fundamentally transforms the process of graphic design, but also, honestly, all art making. Walter Gropius called this the Staatliches Bauhaus. It means the National House of Building. Most of the initial faculty were expressionist artists. This is a movement that we haven't talked about very much. However, by 1922, international constructivism was the guiding force. So here's an image of Walter Gropius, 1883 to 1969 are his life dates. He worked with Peter Behrens, so he has his roots in the same Art Nouveau and early 20th century movements that we talked about in Unit 1. He also really yearned for this 20th century Gesamtkunstwerk. For him, though, architecture is the central locus whereby all arts can be fused into a new whole. And this is why he calls it the Bauhaus, because he really sees building as the central point in the production of art making. Another very important faculty member is Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. He joined the faculty in 1923. He's from Hungary, but he's friends with Van Doesburg and El Lissitzky. El Lissitzky, he's the suprematist and constructivist artist who we talked about last week. He's the one that really promotes international constructivism. Moholy-Nagy works with Josef Albers to transform the foundations course into a logical analysis of forms and materials, including things like plexiglass and steel. So you see there's this very positive attitude towards machines, towards industrialization, and towards modern materials. In that way, it's quite different from anything we saw in the 19th century. Moholy-Nagy has what's called a functionalist aesthetic. For him, every art form was to be evaluated primarily on its ability to perform its most basic task effectively. And it's Moholy-Nagy who argues that sans serif is the most ideal form of typography because it is the most clear. And for Moholy-Nagy, typography is supposed to be clear, and so you need to have a typeface that will always be legible. I also want us to think about the machine aesthetic again. So here's this Louis Hine photograph that we looked at back in Cubism and with Art Deco. It's a very important concept for the Bauhaus as well. Similar to the Russians, artists at the Bauhaus want to use artistic strategies to contribute to new German industrialization. In fact, this becomes the theme of the Bauhaus exhibition in 1923. Art and technology, a new unity. Technology does not need art, but art does need technology. So this exhibition is what we're going to be talking about because, as I said before, the Bauhaus was established in 1919. 4 years later, the government of Saxony wants some sort of accounting for what they've been paying for. And so the Bauhaus puts together an exhibition in 1923 under this technology and art, a new unity theme. So what we're looking at here is a poster advertising the exhibition. And as you look at it initially, it seems entirely abstract, right? There's a red square. The paper itself was originally white. There's some blue lines, and then the lettering is all rectangular down near the bottom. It should remind you of De Stijl, and it's deeply influenced by that. However, where De Stijl becomes entirely non-objective, if you look at this Schleifer exhibition poster, it is actually a man or a person. So here's the eye, here's a long nose and a mouth. And so the abstraction, this geometric abstraction becomes a human form. You see that same image repeated in this exhibition poster by Just Schmidt. So if you look in the center, here is that face again, right there, but now it's part of this kind of machine-like structure. It looks like it's a robot on wheels, and the typography is built into it. So there's Staatliches Bauhaus. Ausstellung is exhibition, July through September 1923 in Weimar. So this should remind you of suprematism and the type of energy that they embed in their geometric compositions through their use of angles, their combination of geometric forms, the use of negative space. All of these things really contribute to the dynamic appearance of this poster. What we're looking at here is the exhibition catalog, which was designed by Moholy-Nagy. So this was an unusual catalog in that it was square-shaped, not rectangular the way most books were. But that was intentional. He's playing with the shape of a square as a way of understanding space. And you see that also here within the first pages. So if you look at the way he set up the text, he's made it almost as if the text becomes a framing device. So here we see Staatliches Bauhaus making a very firm corner, and then it repeats here with Weimar, and then the numbers here become like a block, a square, and then here Weimar, Munich, and this is Bauhaus Verlag, that means Bauhaus Publications. I think it's worth looking at Moholy-Nagy's catalog next to Zara's Bulletin Dada from just a few years earlier. And you can see the way that the Bauhaus artists are taking elements of Dada, which is meant to be deeply disruptive, and shifting it slightly so that it's no longer disruptive, but rather engaging and legible and different. I mean, here the Bulletin Dada is illegible. Everything is overprinted and it's difficult to read. It's all in different typefaces. But when you look at the Moholy-Nagy, it almost reads like engineering tools, like a corner ruler, the type of tool that an engineer would use. And that's exactly what they're going for in the Bauhaus. So even though the exhibition is a success, the Bauhaus still gets kicked out of Weimar, and that's what leads them to move to Dessau, which was a big industrial city. It was the location of a major German Air Force manufacturer. And it's in Dessau that Gropius builds his school, and that's really, when we think of the Bauhaus, that's what we think of. And so that's the next lecture that I want you to listen to.